thanks everybody for being here on a exciting day, I think, for half of America at least. I appreciate it. As you can tell from the talks so far and just from engaging in cannabis, it's a very diverse topic and a diverse industry. I learned about diversity inclusion to lead to natural resource management success through an adaptive management of watersheds Ph.D. program that I did at the University of Florida. Moving into that, I had a solid science foundation of soil and water science. And so I look at the world as a globe that's a natural resource that we're here to steward, and the best way to do that is to have healthy communities that are integrated and buying into the idea of stewarding our Mother Earth. So I'm going to talk with you today about cannabis appellations in a way that is informative a bit from California's process of regulating cannabis in a commercial market, and maybe in a way that can inspire people in Hawaii as you move forward with strengthening your medical cannabis system or recreational system or commercial system as you move forward. The talk today will go over these topics loosely. I'll define the appellations, the type that I'm speaking of. Brian did a great job of setting that up and talking about the geographic indicators versus terroir-based appellations, a little bit about cannabis policy, Humboldt County appellations, people, place, plant, the core components of cannabis appellations, and then some ideas for pathway forward to Hawaii, though with the knowledge that you all know more than I do about exactly what's going on in Hawaii. So when I'm talking about cannabis appellations, I'm specifically advocating for terroir-based appellations. I will preface that by saying that the tourism aspect that Brian is talking about is, I think, a critical component to cannabis community farming and sustainability. And so those geographic indicators that we can protect a state or a county or a city and say this cannabis was produced in Oahu or Hilo or Puna is also very important. However, when I'm talking about terroir-based appellations, I'm going to suggest this definition, which is being proposed to the California Department of Food and Agriculture's Cannabis Appellations program at this time by a group of stakeholders participating in informing and hoping to shape that program. So California's cannabis appellations would be a geographical area from where the quality or the characteristics of the cannabis produced are essentially due to the geographical environment, including natural and human factors. And we will add that an appellation of origin can only be used for cannabis that is planted in the ground, in open air, and grown without artificial light during the flowering stage all the way through harvest. The reason why we're advocating for a terroir-based definition for appellations of origin like this is because we believe that the plant has to be grown in the environment that surrounds it, the natural environment, to produce its unique quality. But also from a personal perspective, I see the regenerative farming movement and the biodynamic farming movement and the organic farming movement really supporting terroir-based appellations, and those movements support watershed stewardship, land stewardship, social stewardship. So it's really important, I think, to advocate for a terroir-based farming system. So in California, we have in the last decade really moved along in with regulating cannabis and the way it is grown and the way it is distributed to people. In 1996, we had our Proposition 215 passed, which was medical marijuana. It allowed us to grow 99 plants. By 2013, up here in Humboldt County, it was widely said that 999 was the new 99. What we saw was vast watershed devastation at at the hands of having very liberal cultivation regulations in the absence of environmental regulations. And at the same time, there were no testing. So patients and consumers were probably consuming some pesticides that were not good for them. In 2016, Proposition 64 passed. In California, this led us to a commercial industry where we have adult use, which is recreational, that's what it's considered, and then medical. And with Prop 64, we have, in my opinion and in my experience, lost a lot of our access to medicine. Everybody is allowed to grow 6 plants per residence by the state standards. Local standards can reduce that, but we're only able to legally share 1 ounce of medicine at a time per person. And so that vastly limits our ability to produce and share medicine in a cost-effective way for people. This is a problem that we'll probably have to go to the Supreme Court to rectify. In 2017, we started to see those environmental regulations that were missing come online. And this is really where I have been able to just plug in, I think in a very productive manner, is advocating for some sense in that balance between environmental regulations and what's happening on the ground with the farmers. Because as you may know, cannabis farmers often get put up on a poster with the most horrible environmental actors. And now with these standards, environmental standards in place in California through the State Water Board and also for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, our cannabis farmers are set to the highest standards of any agricultural product in the world. If your water is coming from a surface water source, a river, a spring, or a creek, then you have to capture 100% of your irrigation water and put it in storage to use during the dry season, for as an example. Right now, prior to the rainy season, there's a regulatory requirement for all farms to be mulched and seeded with cover crops and really protected so that no sediment or nutrients run away into the environment. Now in 2020, 4 years after legalization, decriminalization, Prop 64 decriminalized cannabis, people have been released from jail with that. We see our industry growing in interesting ways, and it definitely is growing, but where we see, I think, a disconnect between community sustainability, environmental sustainability, and the plant and producing good cannabis is that outdoor cannabis that's grown in the ground is regulated so heavily and with such a high cost in terms of money that the indoor industry is booming. Cannabis is selling for more, they have to spend less on regulations, and on top of that, they have access to often municipal water and year-long lights. So I hope to see that even out as we move forward. As an example of promoting appellations and breaking barriers, I have a couple of videos that I've put in here. This video is a very short one, but this was produced by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And this farmer that is being interviewed is from Humboldt County.
And really think hard about it. It comes down to community.
To live in Humboldt and to grow weed it's an amazing life.
I touch every single plant, every single day. Both county and the state are allowing me to do something that I love to do.
It really has become family, like with folks like Johnny. We care about the people around us. If that can make it through, I'll feel like I've succeeded.
So I think that videos like this are an indication that our state is moving, and I'm sorry, I'm going to try to get back to the, there we go, to the presentation, is moving in a direction that is now uplifting these farmers that are abiding by these standards and participating by the regulatory market. All of these videos touch me because they're my friends. And it's been just hard. So cannabis appellations, I think primarily the people here, and this is my mother, Ananda, are the stewards of the plant and the planet. And I think that by telling our story in the form of an appellation, telling the story of the land and the cultural practices and the way that influences the plant helps us to humanize cannabis culture, which is important as we lead towards decriminalization of patients and providers. It allows us this opportunity to define those standards. When I talk to farmers and I ask them, what are your traditional farming techniques? They don't seem to know. However, they go on to tell me about how they make their compost and where they source their water and how they manage for fire protection of their lands, which are all farming standards that when we integrate that into our story and tell people, then the consumer wants to go there and see that land and consume that cannabis. And what we see with appellations, whether they are the geographic indicator or a terroir-based appellation, is that it increases the value of the agricultural product. And we can see this with champagne and gorgonzola and Darjeeling tea and tequila, that name alone would pay a little more than something that didn't have that label. And then with cannabis appellations, I believe that we can create resilience in our communities by diversifying economic input through factors such as tourism. So, you know, everybody that's coming to town to visit a farm, to buy cannabis, they are also going to put their heads in beds, they're going to eat, they're going to buy art, and that can really create resilience in our community. Here's another example of a regenerative cannabis farmer telling their story in a place that will have a sweet appellation.
Where we dry farm here in the Holmes and Shively River Valley, it has more to do with heat and pressure than actually people think. People think it's like we have to plant the plants early and their roots go way deep and they tap into the water table. And that's not really the case. Here on the hottest, driest days, so in the most drought conditions, the sun hits the bare soil and we have kind of cultivated the top layer of the soil to make the gas vapors and the water vapors move through it easily. And so we benefit from the high water table, but it's not about a taproot going deep. It's more about the surface of the soil and the capillary layer being available to get the gases to water the plants as they push through the soil. Super counterintuitive for me, who I've spent the last 18 years on forest soil and building from a forest humus and real mycelium rich, no-till kind of style of farming to go to this style of farming, which is really just as bare bones and basic as it can be. And it has a lot to do with cultivation of the soil and tilling and breaking up. If you just move the soil away, just this like this, you can see how much moisture is under there already. And that's not even an inch deep. I mean, I can just dig down like this and it's moist enough that I can pretty much, this is probably 3 or 4 inches deep, and I can probably make a ball. There's no rocks here. It's just beautiful alluvial river silt soil. And so we get to plant in the 100% native soil, which is a super blessing. There's definitely easy to get caught up in all the negatives and all the red tape and all the double standards that you consistently come across. But for the most part, it's pushing us to be the best that we can be. It's pushing our water storage and pushing ourselves to really show other industries that, you know, there can be a triple bottom line into your you know, that puts the environment, the community, and your profits as a as an indicator of health and robustness. I don't know about what's coming in the future, but I know about right now, it feels good. And it feels good to be able to be out here in the open and be building something with a legacy behind it.
I think that you can begin to see that by seeing this cannabis farmer on their farm, driving a tractor, touching the soil, talking about their methods, you can see that the place is unique, and you can also see that it's just a plant and that's just a farmer, and that we should not be criminalizing this activity. And I think that this part of telling the story is very important, and very
we dry farm here in the homes in Shively.
Excuse me, a very important component of moving the cannabis industry forward in a way that allows us all to benefit, allows us to provide more medicine, to provide better medicine, to make money at our livelihoods, and to celebrate our lifestyle. Okay, so people, plant, place. Well, when we talk about the place, we all love our home. Like, oh my gosh, the Big Island. We have how many ecosystems? 21, 23. People are going cannabis in so many aspects of that. Here in Humboldt County, we have coastal influence up on the mountaintops and down low, and we have beautiful pasture land, and we have beautiful forest land. And when we're able to celebrate that place and have that plant in the ground and understand that it is directly influenced by where it's grown, then I think that it increases the IQ of our community in terms of what it is to steward our environment, to know that our environment is nearly perfect in producing the plant that is able to serve the community. And so I think we should celebrate terroir, celebrate our soil and microdiversity of that soil, and build the soil. When we do that, we're storing carbon, and we are really cleaning water. And when we farm in a regenerative way, which is a terroir-based farming way, then we are supporting ecosystem services through diversity. We're creating food in our systems, which all work together to stimulate a resilient economy in terms of nutrition and money and time. And then again, the increasing the value of the agricultural product. This is my last little short video, but I love them. This is in the same valley where Crystal is growing in another regenerative farm.
One of the hardest things that I've noticed with people dry farming cannabis, they want to do too much to the plant. They want to work the plant too much. There's like a million little things they want to do to it, when it's more about working the land around the plant.
We do a lot of unconventional things that, we don't use trellis, we don't stake things, we don't fertilize, we don't spray, we have amazing soil. We don't need to do anything, which makes us really lucky.
I personally believe that it makes the plants stronger, and I like the idea that the plants are like drawing up their own water. They're not being oversaturated, they're not being overwatered.
Well, we do runner cannellini Italian butter bean, heirloom tomatoes, Abe Lincoln, Cherokee, purple beets, lemon cucumbers, Eel River melon, which is it's a cantaloupe crossed with the Japanese melon that was developed here in the valley, ice cream watermelon, a bunch of sweet corn. The sunflowers that you saw are that's our windbreak.
And we got the winter squash, the delicata,
yes,
and the blue Hokkaido. I really love the fruit trees here in Chively so much, and the redwoods and the water. Such a beautiful place.
Being a part of it is incredible. It's an incredible time, and it's always exciting every phase of the season.
These videos were made by my friend La Osa, and you could find her on Vimeo, and she has more videos if you're interested. Okay, so when we talk about celebrating the plant, when we talk about terroir-based appellations and how that influences the plant, I think that the last video really showed us that, plants, not all farms have that level of soil and not that chemistry, that's level of soil fertility, excuse me. That's a loam soil. That's the best soil in the earth. Like that's the type of soil people would steal. Some people, not us. And when we grow the plant in different environments, it's going to have a different expression of its chemical profile. And we have seen that companion planting influences the terpene profile of those plants. So when we're growing our integrated pest management flowers, when we're growing food that is well suited to that area alongside our cannabis plant, then we are supporting that unique of the plant. And what that will allow for us moving forward is to specialize in plants that serve us differently depending on our medical needs or our emotional needs or just our spiritual needs. And so I think it's a very important reason to put the plant in the ground and to allow local programs to breed farmers to breed these plants so that they develop in a way that allows them to grow in the natural conditions and really reach optimal maturity so that we can receive the entire entourage effect of that genetic plant. So that's just quick plant, people, place. And you know, I know moving forward in Hawaii, I did my mom's medical marijuana registration. I was just like, holy moly, $75 for 2 years. That was so easy. It took me like a half hour to do it. But then talking with Brent and learning more about how constraining it really is to produce medicine or to receive free medicine or low cost medicine, you know, it really shows how much work there is to be done in Hawaii. And I know that there is a lot of work being done, and it's the amount of nurses and nursing organizations that you have involved in leading the pathway forward with cannabis is amazing. And I think working to identify those champions and like Brent bringing everybody together, these people that have the energy and the motivation to lead the way, let's coalesce around them and let's share, define our values and define environmental stewardship, define social well-being as part of those values that we're going to lift up as we move cannabis forward in what will be a more regulated space. And as we build that, let's make sure to bring in a diversity of people. In Hawaii, you have a great opportunity to work with the coffee farmers to move appellations forward. And while cannabis might be stumbling at, you know, barriers to access into the regulated market, you can still be working with the coffee farmers to inform what appellations may look like and how we define standards and therefore strengthen the appellation and the movement itself, and really partner with regulators, with your representatives, and pay attention when policy is being formed. Read the draft policy, comment, go to the Capitol, talk to people, and tell your story, because your story is what's going to melt everybody's heart and show the world that you're harmless people that are stewarding the environment and a plant in a beautiful way. So mahalo. And here's my contact information. If you want to follow up with me with any questions, I have tons of literature about appellations. I did design a baseline research study for Humboldt County to establish the geographic differences and inform that for California's appellations program. I'm happy to share information with you about that. I go to Hawaii now and then to visit my mom. The pandemic has really limited my travel, but I would love to support your endeavors in any way I can from here or from there.